Hi, I'm Rebecca Hintze, and I'm here with Walter Corey. And Walter is an impressive man to me for many, many reasons. For one, he's an Ivy League graduate. Princeton, Yale are just a few on his CV. But he's also a worldwide leader, and this is something that I'm passionate about, understanding leadership and how we can improve as people and how that actually brings about a world change. So let's hear a little bit from Walter. Walter, you've had a long, impressive history, including working with our U.S. government and mentoring our Navy SEALs, which to my sons would be the ultimate. Tell me what you believe is the core of our society's problems when it comes to our inability to be real leaders and step up to the plate to really make or bring about world change?
Good question. Excellent question, Becky. One of the things we've learned in the extensive work we've done with the military and also with sports figures is the importance of self-awareness in leadership. So many people try to lead others without having first learned how to lead themselves. And learning to lead oneself is all about self-awareness. The Greeks were onto this 2,500 years ago. Over the temple of Apollo at Delphi, there are two words in Greek, gignoska se auton, translated, know thyself. And until we get to know who we are, what our potential is, where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, it's very, very hard to persuade others to follow. It's very hard, almost impossible. One of the things that the Navy has learned with great impact is the success that the Navy flyers had in the Vietnam War. When captured by the North Vietnamese, they were forced to put together a whole new code of conduct at the Hanoi Hilton, the prison where most of them were held. And the old template of name, rank, birth, serial number didn't work anymore because they were tortured within an inch of their lives, and many of them were killed. So the leadership, led mostly by Stockdale, Admiral Stockdale, put together a whole new way of creating high-performance teams that were oppressed by a larger culture, as the commissars had the power of life and death over them, and how to react to that so as to, one, maintain their mission, maintain their values, and return home with honor. Stockdale and his cohorts learned how to do this, and so much of what they did was based on very elementary principles, many of which we learn in our religious cultures. For instance, the importance of knowing who you are, the importance of forgiveness, the importance of listening, the importance of caring for others. All of these go, and of course perseverance, never giving up. All of these go into the composite of making up extraordinary leadership that takes us through difficult times. You ask, why don't we have more today? Because this kind of leadership is really about shared sacrifice, shared suffering. And most people think that they can get to Easter Sunday without going through Good Friday. And it's not possible. You have to suffer a little bit. And if you suffer with your teammates, if you sacrifice together, you learn how to trust each other and how to work as a team. And that's what's missing today, in my opinion. So once you build on self-awareness and you learn self-discipline, which comes out of these crucible situations, then the next step and the inevitable step that's critical is self-confidence. I think it's very clear, at least in our work, that self-awareness leads to self-discipline, and self-discipline leads to self-confidence, and that is the bedrock for developing leadership skills.
So self-confidence is particularly important to bring up because really the core of most dysfunctional behavior in our country, whatever it is, be it addiction, disorders in families, even divorce, can peel away to be self-awareness, self-confidence issues, lack of self-esteem, not really knowing who you are inside. So you bring about a very important point, which also I think ties to working with families, that really the family unit is so critical in our society because this is the initial unit where people do learn to love and to sacrifice and to forgive. And when those things happen, they are more able, at least individually, to go out into the world and to have relationships and be able to work better in teams and whatnot, I would imagine. So Walter, what is your experience and all of your knowledge? And actually you have a master's in counseling as well as a doctorate in leadership and many other qualifications, which you'd spend a whole hour talking about. But your understanding of the family unit as the basis of our society. Talk to me about that.
Well, in a few short words, it's the laboratory in which we learn how to be human and therefore divine. And we have to learn, we need to learn, we're encouraged to learn, we're given the opportunity to learn many important attributes of leadership. For instance, humility. For instance, selflessness. For instance, forgiveness. I mean, all of these are qualities. They're leadership attributes that permeate our culture, but in the past 50 years or so have taken a riding in the rumble seat. You go back to the beginning. In our culture, in our religious culture, we're taught that the perfect prayer is the Our Father. And what we're not always taught is that the key, the heart of that prayer is we ask forgiveness as we forgive others. The heart of that prayer. We recite it, we talk about it, and how often it is for us to take that and bring it into our daily lives. Because many of us live in the space of, I've been hurt and I want to hurt back, I want to retaliate. And what we're called upon to do, and our culture is so, our religious culture is so strong on this, look, you've been hurt, turn the other cheek. We asked the master, how often do you want us to turn the other cheek? He said 70 times 7. Well, that's infinity, as we know, 70 times 7. That's the number of infinity. And yet, we all want to keep score. This person did me bad, and I'm waiting for the opportunity. That's the kind of thing that corrodes our insides. That's the kind of thing that really makes it subverts our capacity for leadership. Leadership is about moving forward. And the SEALs are great at this. If somebody messes with them, they may forget it in order to move forward, and they will move forward. And their ability to do that, their capacity for coolness under fire, is second to none in the world. So I think that that's a major thing. Another thing is humility. The SEALs teach us that you can only lead where you yourself, as an individual leader, are prepared to start. So you don't say to your men, you see that nest over there, you have to go move that out. The SEAL leaders are in the forefront. They're in the forefront of moving in on that mission. And that's about humility. It's also about selflessness. One of the things they teach us is that I am my brother's keeper. And that selflessness is implicit in our religious tradition. It used to be implicit in our political traditions, but now all of the emphasis is on with them. What's in it for me? You ask somebody to do something, and they say, well, what am I going to get out of it? SEALs don't operate like that. SEALs understand that they are mission-centric. They want to get the mission accomplished, and they're willing to subordinate their personal interests to the interests of the team, the interests of the group. And that's the basis for building high-performance teams. Selflessness. It's critical. And it's in very, very short supply today. And there'll come a time, it swings back. All of these things swing back when people recognize how important it is, and we'll start doing it. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, and it may be the price of survival going into the future.
I think this is critical because people often look at a Navy SEAL and they think power, strong, maybe controlling, even in nature. And yet the description that you're giving here is about a humble, serving, self-sacrificing person who knows how to work well in teams, to give up maybe what they need in the moment for what's best for the group, to watch over and to serve one another. Forgiveness, these are qualities that are essential in leadership, and yet in our world they've been made to look like, that's the wimp's response,
right.
So wonderful to have an expert like you point out really what the true path is to effective leadership.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think it's certainly true. You get it. You also get that kind of humility in certain forms of civil leadership. For instance, Nelson Mandela is recognized as one of the great leaders of the 20th century, and he perfected a style of leadership where he led from the back. I'm very fond of the story of his going off in an election campaign, and he had his team with him, and they were going into the bush to a very remote precinct. And as it happened, they hit a squall, a very serious squall, and the plane was tossed about and turned over on its stomach, and people were convinced, most of the people and staff on the plane were convinced that this was the end. This was the end. They were going to die. And not so Mandela. His behavior was quite different. So as the plane landed, when it landed, there were some reporters there, and they started interviewing the staff, and the staff said, "My God, we thought this was the end," but we turned over, and there was Nelson Mandela, and do you know what Nelson was doing? He was reviewing the staff papers. He showed absolutely no fear, no concern for his survival. He was as cool as a cucumber. So the newspaper people heard that, and they ran over to Mandela, and they said, "What's this all about? You weren't afraid?" And Mandela said, "I was scared. I was scared to my wits' end, but I knew that if I showed fear, it would spread like emotional contagion throughout the plane. A leader has to show leadership. And that's what I did," he said. "I modeled it. And by doing that, I kept the temper of fear down." I think that's a critical story because it shows humility on his part, it shows selflessness, and it shows coolness under fire, which are the critical elements that distinguished him in that situation, but also distinguished Navy SEALs in the many situations in which they find themselves protecting our country's interest.
Just moving forward, letting go of that fear. I think sometimes our fears are what we see as stumbling blocks or walls in our ability to actually perform or to move forward. And yet we learn from experts that not having the fear is not realistic. It's a human response to have fear. So we can acknowledge that. I have fear. I'm feeling this way. However, I'm going to perform anyway. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to model effective leadership by working with my own emotions and not necessarily manifesting them or letting them come up and cause chaos in a moment.
You've got it. You've got it. You've hit the epicenter of the bullseye, because we teach that courage is not the absence of fear. It's moving forward in the presence of fear. Or to say it another way, courage is fear that is its prayers. I mean, you look at the New Testament. The word that appears most often in the New Testament, the phrase that appears most often is, "Why are you afraid? What do you have fear about? Why fear?" The Master is asking us that all the time. What's there to fear? I'm with you. I mean, that's the ultimate consolation. The Master is with us.
So you're bringing up some age-old concepts here. You're talking about the New Testament. You've also brought up some ancient Greek philosophers as well. You're bringing in basic truths into important points in our society and leadership at this time.
Well, I think we're contemporizing them. For instance, it was Plato who said that all education is emotions-based. Unless you understand how emotions work, it's very hard to educate yourself and to educate others. And now he said that, 2,500 years ago? But 2,000 years ago, the Master, the Rabbi, the Savior in our New Testament knew that, and he taught that as well. In St. John's Gospel, I think it's John chapter 5, verses 6 to 8. It's the pool at Bethesda, where this person who's disabled has been sitting by the pool waiting for 37 years to get to the healing waters. And every time he gets up, somebody beats him there, and the efficacy, the vitality of the waters have gone. They're spent. All the bubbling's over. He's been waiting 37 years. And the Master comes and he sees this, and he says to the man, "Do you really want to be healed?" Implicit in that is the question, or are you so dependent on being a victim, on not taking responsibility for your own behavior, that you just want to sit here indefinitely? And that's a question laden with emotional values. What kind of responsibility do you want to take for yourself? How aware are you of what you're doing here? And suddenly the light, the aha moment goes off in the man's eye. And Christ sees that, and what does Christ say? Pick up your pallet and walk. And he does so. So there's been an emotional healing, a aha moment into self-awareness. And I think that is the potential that the modern day healing that you've worked so extensively and successfully about around essential oils, which have that enormous chemical potency, have that same power if they're used in that same process, which is heal yourself first, and then you're in a position to start healing other people. That's ministry.
So, Walter, you have just said everything that I believe, and in such eloquent and perfect terms. I also like in that story the self-responsibility to get up the motion into action to make it happen. And that is an essential piece, right? We come to know ourselves, we have that self-awareness moment, and then we take what we've learned and we move that into action, which brings about the ultimate healing.
And it's change. I mean, change is difficult because it requires not only self-responsibility and self-discipline, but the first step is self-awareness. And that requires a lot of thinking and a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation. Now, some people can meditate on a street in the middle of Salt Lake City. Other people need to be near running water, ocean or lake or what have you. But all of us have a sweet spot for getting in touch with who we really are, our core values as people. And when we come to recognize what that sweet spot is, we have a responsibility to move towards it, to develop it, to live into it as much as we can.
Let's talk for a minute about EQ, because
Yeah.
you brought it up. So the emotional quotient, which the Goldman study in 1995 taught us or showed us that our emotional quotient, or how well we understand our emotions and we can relate emotionally with other people in our world, is a higher indicator of our success in life than our intelligence and our IQ, which is huge. It's important, and probably maybe that study, in my opinion, has been maybe not evaluated as much as it should have been in public schools and whatnot, because we need to start young to teach people how to work with their emotions, how to understand themselves. What you're talking about, connecting to who we are, to meditating, to knowing our purpose, that leads us to understanding our own emotions. Our emotions can lead us to that. Our purpose can lead us to those emotions, but that is a very powerful process and essential to our success in life. And anyone who's probably watching this at this moment wants to be successful in life. So what's your advice on how to access that emotional quotient for a powerful outcome in life?
Well, again, to quote it again, it comes down to self-awareness. One of the things we learn is our values. And the emotions are signposts that point us to our values. For instance, I came from a background where I did a lot of sports, worked for a national security agency, and as a male growing up in the 60s and 70s, we're taught, suck it up. You feel an emotion, suck it up. Don't be a wimp. And for a long time I did that. And then as I began to mature and study this material, I understood that getting in touch with my emotions was critical. Look at Christ. I mean, when happy, he laughed. When sad, he cried. The shortest verse in the entire New Testament occurs when he goes to see Lazarus' tomb, and he says, he cried. That's the entire verse. He cried. And he laughed. He knew how to party. Some of his detractors criticized him because he spent so much time with people at parties. And when he was angry, look what he did with the people in the temple. The people who were selling outside the temple. He took his whip and he scourged them. He blew his cool. So being in touch with your emotions and letting them flow and letting them go is very important. I know we're always called to a new frontier in this sort of self-disclosure. This past year, my brother died a particularly tragic death in a propane explosion in Yarmouth, Maine. And he and I had been close for a long time. We lived together in a sense for 66 years. He was disabled. And I realized after he had passed how deeply, how intimate and deep our relationship was. And from time to time, I'd be driving afterwards and I'd have to pull over to the side of the road because the tears just overwhelmed me. I realized this was a very important part of healing. Even though I'd been taught as a child, this is a wimpy thing to do. You can't cry. You're a man. You can't do that. You have to suck it up. You can't show that kind of weakness. As it turns out, being a man is being in touch with that and letting it flow and letting it go and owning it. And as men, the more of this we do, the more successful we are in approaching our humanity and touching who we really are, becoming who we're meant to be.
And also, you're healthier for it.
Hope so.
Well, because plenty of studies show that when we suppress our emotions, we store them in parts of our body that creates illness over time. We build up stress, and a lot of our medications or even antidepressants are meant to suppress emotion so that we don't have to feel it, so we can have a break, which in some cases can be very useful, but can also be detrimental to our overall health, to blocking that flow of emotion and getting that connection. And I think happiness occurs when we do connect to those emotions. It's not realistic to expect that every day of our life is going to be a party, happy, full of joy, because the process of learning and growth, as you mentioned, sacrifice, there are many experiences that we need to go through, good and bad, right and wrong, to lead us to personal growth and development, to knowing ourselves, and to really being happy. We don't know happiness if we haven't had a bad day. We don't know the contrast.
That's
so
true.
It's essential. So
I agree with that. And the way I try to conceptualize it to myself is that I see emotions as a river flowing under our consciousness. And in that river sit all of the emotions. Now, on a particular day, one may surface. It may be sadness, it may be grief, it may be anger, it may be shame, it may be joy, whatever it might be. But when that emotion surfaces, I think our responsibility is twofold. A, to analyze it, to understand it, to call it what it is, and B, to process it, to work with it. And in that sense, it's a kind of management. What I find interesting about the oils, because I've used them before in my life, is that they enhance that process. I know that when I'm in a particularly tense situation, putting some lavender in the palm of my hand and sniffing it is a very good thing, because it tends to calm me down. As a matter of fact, when I was working with troops that were deploying to Afghanistan from the Maine National Guard, one of the things I suggested to them as they go off on IED patrol was, before they start, there are two ways to handling this, and you might want to do both. A, you might want to get down on your knees and say the 23rd Psalm, or you might want to do some lavender, because both can be a source of great healing and centering.
Well, it's that Mother Nature touch that brings us back to centering who we are, and that we can be safe on this earth, that we can have faith and we can be relaxed and calm. So it does that on a chemical level, but I think also on an emotional or spiritual level, definitely. And there are several essential oils that could be useful in that moment. So they are very effective tools at centering and bringing up emotion as well. When we have blocked and stored emotions, essential oils can bring those emotions up and help us to work with them. But again, it's our choice to take on that self-awareness and move to the next point. So it's exciting for me because all the things you're talking about are the things I love and have written about now in 2 books. So we have lots in common. But one of the things that you've done for me, and that's been going to be very effective for all of the doTERRA audience and many others, is you have taken your test that you've used, that's been used in the military systems. It's a Princeton developed certified test that helps with algorithms and whatnot that you can take. It's timed and whatnot, and teaches you about your emotional makeup. You did an evaluation with me, and now you've created that for the doTERRA audience. So tell us about the
You did well on that test. You socked it right over the wall. You got a 4-bagger on yours. Well, it's based, as you say, on work that was done initially with the psychology department at Princeton University, and tweaked ever since through Seeds of Peace in Otisfield, Maine, where we worked with young adults from the conflict regions, Maine National Guard, Naval War College, SEALs, also with leading sports figures, amateur and professional. And it's based on a very simple premise, that if you know how to ask a person how they're feeling, you will get an honest answer. You will get authentic self-disclosure. You cannot start that kind of inquiry asking, are you managing your anger today? No, because when people hear that, they want to give you the right answer. The right answer, we keep telling them, and this is on the web, the whole test is on the web, is your reflex. What does your reflex tell you? So if you ask them this question, I find that when I raise my voice, I win arguments. Agree, disagree. Strongly agree, strongly disagree. They will see that as non-confrontative, and seeing it in that light, they will tend to answer it accurately. And when they do, you have a data point. And that data point, massaged through a series of algorithms, will tell you unmistakably exactly what their attribute level is with respect to anger management. So one of the things that the military has learned, and that's why they're using it extensively now in their officer development continuum in the Navy and beyond, is that the LET opens up a window into what's going on emotionally in an officer's life, so that so that you can begin to work, and he can be or she can begin to work with the challenges they're facing at that particular moment. So we use that in sports. Many of the teams use it before they start recruiting players to find out whether this particular young athlete is overwhelmed with stress or lacks self-confidence or what have you. And now I'm really delighted. I'm excited that it's being taken over into this area of healing. Because as I say, I used it myself, and now that I see a far, far, far wider application of it, I think it's frankly a grace of God. Yes, you see that on a particular day, you take the test, and you might be dealing with confidence issues, you might be dealing with grief issues, and the test will point you unerringly to what those issues are and suggest what kind of oils you might want to use to deal with them. I think that's a gift, and I think it's a gift of God. So I'm happy to pass it along to all those who want to use it.
And I'm excited about it because this does open a window for people at doTERRA to be able to understand exactly what emotion they're feeling, what essential oil or blend that they would be using to help to resolve that. But again, it comes back to all the things you've talked about. We can use the oil, and it can help us, but again, it's going to come down to our own personal self-awareness and self-choice to move forward in life.
Exactly.
I have one last question for you.
Fire away.
So, of all the people I've met in my life, I would say that you are one of the most successful.
I'm deeply flattered by that. Thank you.
And I am honored that we were able to visit with you and interview and work together, which has just been a privilege.
And back to you.
Thank you. So, would you tell me what you feel is the determining factor to your success? If you could look over your life and say, why has Walter Corey been so successful? I would like to know, why do you feel you've been successful?
Well, that's a hard question. I think the answer is twofold. The first is that I've tried always to be honest with myself, because I've learned that if I can't be honest with myself, I can't be honest with other people. And if I'm not honest with other people I don't enjoy, I can't realize the enjoyment of healthy relationships. So I have to be honest with myself. And where I make a mistake, I have to say, Walter, you blew that one. And yet forgive myself for having made that mistake, because I'm only human. So it's a combination of self-awareness and self-forgiveness. The Master has already forgiven me. And at moments when I feel most ashamed or most upset or most frustrated about what I've done, I need to say to myself, and do, because this is a matter of scripting it properly. The Master's forgiven me, I'm forgiving myself. In a nutshell, that's it.
I love it, because so much in success people think I have to be perfect. Well, we know what perfectionism does, right?
Oh, brother.
Perfectionism doesn't work. You know, it's not about, this life isn't about being perfect or making ourselves be perfect or being a certain way so that others will accept us or needing the approval of others. All of those things don't work. It's really all the things that you just said. Self-love, self-awareness, forgiveness, because when we can do it for ourselves, then we can offer it to others. And that brings us happiness, love,
Exactly.
healthy connections, and then things work. And the truth is, relationships are, and communication, like you said, are really the foundation, the keystone of everything that we do in our life. So thank you so much, Walter. You've shared invaluable information today to us.
Well, I hope so. I hope it's useful to you.
It is, and it's
Thanks
been
so much
a
for this
privilege.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Always enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.